Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are jumping straight into what I like to call a masterclass on totally upgrading your thinking and decision-making toolkit. We're drawing directly from the incredible insights curated in Farnham Street's The Great Mental Models Volume 1. If you've ever felt like, you're missing a piece of the puzzle when solving a complex problem, or you just really want to understand how the world's most effective thinkers actually operate, well, you are in exactly the right place. Let's get started.
Have you ever wondered why brilliant, literally highly educated people still make absolutely catastrophic decisions? It's a fascinating question, right? And the answer almost always comes down to cognitive blind spots. You see, when we rely on just a single, isolated perspective to navigate what is a highly complex world, we're basically setting ourselves up for failure. Our minds naturally want to simplify things, but when we simplify way too much, we totally lose touch with reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today to construct a really powerful toolkit of thought. We're going to cover 1. The danger of blind spots. 2. Building your mental lattice work. 3. Maps, territories, and competence. 4. First principles and inversion. 5. Predicting second-order consequences. And 6. The razors of simplicity. Section 1. The danger of blind spots. Look, our primary goal today is to get in much better contact with reality. Because in life, business, strategy, you name it, the person with the fewest blind spots wins. It's really that simple. But to remove those blind spots, we first have to recognize how our own minds deceive us. This brings us to a super famous concept. You've probably heard it. To a man with only a hammer, every problem tends to look pretty much like a nail. When really smart people are armed with just one single area of expertise, their ego and a dangerous distance from the actual consequences of their decisions causes them to kind of torture reality just to fit their limited models. Basically, if all you know is economics, everything looks like an economic problem. If all you know is psychology, well, everything is a behavioral issue. Moving right along to Section 2, building your mental lattice work. So now that we clearly see the danger of relying solely on that one single hammer, we've got to pivot to the solution. And the solution here is developing a multidisciplinary approach to thinking. We have to expand our toolbox. And that is exactly what a mental model does for your mind. A mental model is simply a representation of how something works. Think of it like a subconscious lens that helps us infer causality, match patterns, and really just reason through the overwhelming complexity of the real world. We obviously can't hold every single detail of reality in our brains all at once, so we use these models to organize information into digestible, usable chunks. So the crucial point is captured beautifully by the legendary investor Charlie Munger. He said, "You've got to hang experience on a ladderwork of models in your head. You can't just memorize isolated facts. That doesn't work. You actually have to interconnect knowledge from completely different disciplines. We're talking physics, biology, psychology, mathematics, so they reinforce each other and create a really robust foundation for evaluating literally any situation." All right, Section 3, maps, territories, and competence. Let's start putting some of those specific interlocking steel beams into place, shall we? This first set of models is designed to ground our lattice work in reality by establishing very strict boundaries for what we actually know, and honestly, more importantly, what we don't. First up, we absolutely have to recognize that the map is not the territory. A map is just an abstraction, right? It's a reduction, a mere snapshot in time. The territory, however, is reality itself. It's incredibly dynamic, always shifting, and highly complex. The description of the thing is not the thing itself. Now, maps are absolutely essential for navigation, for sure, but we cannot treat them as dogma. If reality changes, well, your map must change too, because reality is the ultimate, unforgiving feedback loop. And effectively navigating that territory requires knowing exactly where you excel. This is called your circle of competence. Within your specific circle, you know the nuances. You know exactly what you don't know. Stepping outside that circle without acknowledging it, that is where disasters happen. Knowing the absolute edges of your competence while having the relentless curiosity to learn and the courage to solicit some brutal external feedback is completely vital to maintaining an edge over everyone else. Which brings us to Section 4, First Principles and Inversion. Once we actually know our boundaries, we can move into the active problem-solving phase of our lattice work. How do we actually deconstruct a complex, seemingly impossible situation and reverse engineer a breakthrough solution? We do it through first principles thinking. This is literally how you take off the blinders of conventional wisdom. It involves Socratic questioning and the 5 whys.
Basically, you systematically ask why, you fiercely challenge the underlying assumptions, and you demand evidence until you strip away all the dogma, shared beliefs, and cultural myths. You just keep digging until you land on a non-reducible, falsifiable fact, and from that solid bedrock, you can build entirely new, truly innovative solutions. Now, another incredibly powerful deconstruction tool is inversion. Think of a high-stakes chess match, okay, where every single move is calculated based on what the opponent might do. Inversion means flipping the problem completely around and thinking backward. Instead of aiming directly for your ultimate goal, which is pretty much what everyone else does, you think deeply about what you desperately want to avoid. You figure out what would guarantee a total failure, and then you just eliminate the conditions that perpetuate that failure. Let's move to and see how this builds perfectly into a practical framework like psychologist Kurt Lewin's force field analysis. So you identify the problem and your objective, sure, but then you analyze the forces supporting change versus the forces impeding it. And often, the best strategy isn't to push harder on the supporting forces, but to actually use inversion to remove the friction and eliminate those specific forces that are impeding your progress. As the great mathematician Carl Jacobi famously advised, invert, always invert. Honestly, examining exactly how you could make a problem significantly worse is very often the fastest, most illuminated route to actually solving it. Section 5. Predicting second-order consequences. Now let's shift our focus forward a bit. A truly robust mental lattice work doesn't just solve problems right now in the present. It actually anticipates the future. It forces us to move way beyond immediate, obvious results and think holistically about the entire systems we're operating in.
The absolute ultimate question you must train yourself to ask is simply this: and then what? First-order thinking is easy, it's safe, and it gets you the exact same average results as everyone else. But asking, and then what, unlocks second-order thinking. It forces you to consider the subsequent effects of your actions, and that gives you a massive, long-term strategic advantage over those who only look one single step ahead.
And this brilliantly illustrates the law of unintended consequences. As the ecologist Garrett Hardin noted, you can never merely do one thing. In a highly connected system, your consequences have consequences. Failing to evaluate the effects of the effects is exactly what unleashes absolute disaster. You've got to anticipate the chain reaction. Finally, Section 6, the razors of simplicity. For this last section of our mental lattice work, we are going to introduce razors. Razors are essentially highly efficient intellectual filters for everyday decision-making. They help you shave off all the unnecessary fluff and arrive at the truth much, much faster. The most famous of these is Occam's razor. It states that simpler explanations are generally more likely to be true than super complicated ones. When two models have equal explanatory power, the simpler one with fewer moving parts is almost always the most robust. Unnecessary complexity is very often a trap meant to hide a total lack of true understanding. To put that into perspective, let's actually look at the math behind why simplicity wins. Imagine two explanations. If an explanation relies on just 3 variables and each has a 99% chance of being right, the whole explanation only has a 3% chance of being wrong. But if a complex explanation requires 30 variables to all perfectly align, suddenly you have a 26% chance of being completely wrong. The math literally demands that we favor simplicity. Next up, we have Hamlin's razor. It tells us, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity, ignorance, or laziness. We are so hardwired to assume bad intent when things go wrong. But Hamlin's razor is an incredible tool to counter our own confirmation bias. It prevents us from wasting precious mental energy fighting these phantom villains when, honestly, simple human error is usually the real culprit. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ask yourself, is your mind actively navigating the real, dynamic world, or are you still relying on a static, outdated map? Building a multidisciplinary latticework of mental models isn't just a one-time task. It's a lifelong commitment to seeing the world exactly as it is, updating your understanding constantly, and making undeniably better decisions. Start hanging your experiences on this latticework today, and just watch how reality opens up to you.